I'm Meg Healy from Berta Style, and today I'm going to show you how to transform a loose-fitting shift dress into a matching two-piece top and skirt set that have been seen all over the runways lately. So this pattern in front of me has already been pre-printed according to my size on my fabric. So what we need to first do is locate the waist notch. And we need to cut the pattern into two pieces. So just take a long ruler, have a cutting mat underneath or a pair of scissors. And if you have a rotary blade, just simply trim it from notch to notch, separating the pieces, or draw a line using a fabric marking pen and cut with scissors. Also do the same thing to the back. The back pieces will also have waistline notches. And this style is to have some skin showing in between the two pieces to get that crop top and skirt look. But if you did want more coverage, you can cut a waistband using all of this extra fabric that's on either side of the pattern pieces. And you can build a waistband into the top of the skirt and thread your elastic through that casing and also create a hemband on the top. Or I'm just going to demonstrate elasticating the top edge of the skirt to get that young, hip crop top and skirt style. So I have already gone ahead and serge finished all of my fabric edges to prevent fraying depending on which fabric you get your pattern printed on, or you could zigzag finish over the edges depending on if you have a serger or a sewing machine. I stitched the center fronts and side seam edges together, and I also grabbed some 1-inch wide elastic. And what you can do is just wrap it around your natural waistline, leaving a little bit of an over and underlap. So it's tight without being too tight, making sure the skirt will stay up. And then what you are going to do is pin it to the top edge of your skirt. And I have a pin to represent my other half of my elastic. I always have the stitched over and underlap at the back and then the half in the front to create an even gather. So I'm just going to pin that to one edge and pin this to the other. And you can use a serger. I find a serger's easier to, whoops, that came undone. Let's make sure our pin stays in there. So I like to use a serger, and you want to stretch the elastic as you serge the elastic into the top edge to gather in that top edge of the skirt. And I have a sample right here. So you can see it gathers in that waistline really nicely. So how we are going to finish this is that actually flip it once more to the wrong side, and we are going to top stitch it in place close to the edge of this serge. We don't want to do it too inside of the elastic to avoid this edge flipping up inside the garment, and it can be really uncomfortable. So I'm just going to flip this in and stretch as I top stitch from the right side. And I like to just start at the center back. You could also do a zigzag stitch if you want. So I am going to do a little back stitch and then stretch the elastic as I'm sewing and feeling with my fingers the ridge of the serging from underneath. So I'm making sure I'm catching it. So you just go all the way around. For this, if I'm doing a straight stitch, I lengthen my stitch length a little bit as well. and just come back around to where you started and back stitch once again. And at this point too, you'll want to finish your bottom hem edge and then press up your hem allowance. And the good thing about these patterns is all the notches are already printed on. So you can see all of your hem notches. So you don't have to measure up ever so often. So I'm just going to set this aside and we can grab our front pieces. So to finish my front piece, I have first interfaced the wrong side of my back and front neckline facing pieces, stitched the shoulder seams, pressed those open, and serge finished all around the edge. And on these pieces, I have serged again all of the edges, sewn the center front, pressed open, stitched the center back, finished those edges together, pressed to one side, as well as finish those shoulder seams. Now, for the side seams and armholes, they're sort of sewn and finished in one. So there are notches, and if you serge over them, you can still see them. So we're gonna place our side seams right sides together, and I'm going to place a pin perpendicular to the seam so I know to stop stitching there. I'm going to stitch my side seam right from the waistline up to my armhole notch. Now these patterns do include 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance. So I'm stitching at that allowance. And here what you're going to do, you see this is stitched right here. You're going to press these allowances open and then continue pressing that armhole allowance to the wrong side. So right now I'm just flipping them, but you can give them a nice press, like so. And then working from the right side, I have mine finished right here. You can stitch the allowances open and then continue past this underarm notch to finish the armhole in place. So now I'm going to grab my facing and we'll finish this neckline edge. So I'm just going to place it right sides together, matching up the shoulder seams. So just pin one. Then I also like to put a pin right at that V to keep those points together. And when stitching, we're gonna go right down and pivot at this point right there. But I always like to start stitching at one of the shoulder seams. So starting at one shoulder seam and I'm going across my back neckline to my other shoulder seam. Then down my front. Just make sure you lift up and check that the excess fabric underneath isn't catching in the seam. It's easy to do for this particular neckline seam. coming down to my front. Just making sure everything is flat underneath. Making sure my needle is right in my fabric, lifting my presser foot, pivoting around, aligning the other side of my neckline, and stitching up the rest. At this point too, you will want to clip into this point right here and clip and grade all of your seam allowances, and then press your facing in place. I have my finished one right here with an example of a band that goes around the hem if you want that extra coverage, top stitch in place, and that's how easy it is to transform a loose fitting dress into a matching trending set. And you can have so much fun picking out the pattern that you want for your dress modification.